All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into an idea that is so radical, it might just completely change how you think about, well, everything. We're talking about a whole new take on the very nature of existence. So you know that picture you have in your head of the Big Bang, an explosion expanding out into some big, empty void? I want you to just set that aside for a minute, because this theory asks a completely different question. What if the universe isn't expanding at all? What if instead the whole thing is being rewritten, like a movie, frame by single frame, at a speed that is just unimaginable?
And this is that speed. This is the number. According to what's called the single point theory, or SPT, this is reality's refresh rate. We're talking 1.8 followed by 43 zeros times per second. That's how often the entire universe completes one full cycle. Now think about that. This isn't a pebble dropping in a pond and ripples spreading out. No. This is the entire pond, all at once, redrawing itself instantly.
Okay, so how on earth is that even possible, right? How do you build everything we see from a single cycling point? Well, let's get into the foundational idea.
This right here, this is the big mental leap you have to take. We're so used to thinking of the universe as a box, right? A static place. And all the stuff, planets, stars, us, is just inside it. SPT says, nope, throw that out. It flips that completely on its head. There is no box. There is no container. Existence itself is a dynamic process. It's a verb, not a noun. And the universe we see around us, that's just the output, the result of that ongoing process.
So what exactly is this process? It all boils down to this thing called the single point. I want you to imagine the absolute smallest unit of space that physics even allows, a tiny, tiny volume called a Planck length cubed. The theory says this single, solitary volume is like the fundamental pixel of our reality. And in one of those lightning-fast cycles, this one pixel paints every single possible position in the entire universe to create one complete frame. Think about that. It's one pixel, but it's locked in this incredible process of constantly redrawing the whole show. Okay, I know what you're thinking. A single pixel drawing the whole universe? It sounds a little too simple, doesn't it? I mean, how do you go from that to galaxies and trees and us? Well, the answer is a word you know from physics: interference. This is how solid stuff, how matter itself, emerges from the process.
So here's how it happens step by step. First, that single point is cycling away at that insane frequency we talked about. This cycling generates waves, and these waves spread out and they interact with each other. Now, in some places, those waves add up. They build on each other. That's called constructive interference. And when that happens, it creates this stable, self-reinforcing little knot of energy. And that persistent, stable knot, that is what our senses and our instruments perceive as a solid particle.
SPT gives this a name, a soliton. And this is a really, really important concept to grasp. A particle, in this model, is not some tiny little billiard ball. It is a soliton, which is basically a stable, standing wave. It's not a thing, it's a pattern. The best analogy is a whirlpool in a river. You know, you can see it. It has a shape. It stays in one place, but it's made of nothing but the flowing water. A soliton is just like that, except it's a pattern made out of the fundamental process of reality itself. And if that's true, it leads to this really profound idea about what mass even is. In this theory, mass isn't some property a particle just has. No. It's simply a measure of how persistent that little energy whirlpool is. The more stable the pattern, the more it reinforces itself, the more mass we perceive it to have. Suddenly, mass isn't fundamental. It's just an emergent effect of pure geometry. Okay, that's a beautiful, elegant foundation. But does it actually work? You know, the real test of any new physical theory isn't just that it sounds nice. It's whether it can solve the old, nagging problems that we're stuck on. And that brings us to the next part, solving some of the biggest mysteries in quantum mechanics. And believe me, this is where SPT starts to get really interesting. Okay, look at this. This is where it all clicks into place. Let's take wave-particle duality, that classic quantum headache.
SBT says there's no paradox. A particle is a stable wave pattern. Done. No duality. What about entanglement? Einstein's spooky action at a distance. Well, there's nothing spooky about it here. Entangled particles are just two knots in the same underlying interference pattern. They were never separate to begin with, so of course they're in sync. And the measurement problem. Why does looking at something collapse it? It doesn't. Collapse is just the natural threshold where an interference pattern becomes stable enough for us to call it a particle. It's not magic, it's physics.
Yeah, there's a quote from the source material that just hits the nail on the head. It says SPT reduces quantum ontology to interference geometry, no quantum magic required. It's trying to take the weirdness out of quantum mechanics and replace it with straightforward patterns. Look, beautiful ideas and elegant solutions are great, but this is science, and science demands proof. It demands testable predictions. So that brings us to the absolute make-or-break part of this whole thing, the ultimate litmus test. Can this theory move beyond being a neat thought experiment and actually make a hard, falsifiable prediction about the real world? And the answer, amazingly, is yes. What's so elegant about this is that the entire theory can be boiled down to just one single adjustable number. We'll call it beta. So here's what the proponents did. They took the known measured mass of the proton, a number we already have, and used it to fix the value of this one constant, beta. Then, using that exact same constant, they ran the theory's equations to simulate a proton-proton collision and calculated the mass of the brand new interference pattern that should pop out. So, what did the math spit out? This is the moment of truth. Using only the proton's mass to set its one and only dial, SPT calculated that this collision should create a new particle with a mass of about 125.3 GeV. Okay, so what did the real world say? Well, the actual measured mass of the Higgs boson discovered at the Large Hadron Collider is 125.25 GeV. I mean, let that sink in. That is an absolutely stunningly accurate prediction, and it's derived from first principles, not by just fudging the numbers to get the right answer. You see, a prediction that accurate isn't just about getting the numbers right. It suggests that the underlying story, the story of our entire cosmos, might be completely different than we thought. So for our final section, let's just zoom out and think about the profound implications of living in a universe that's made of nothing but interference. You know, Einstein himself once pointed out this deep tension between the certainty of pure mathematics and the messiness of actual reality. And what's so cool, so compelling about a theory like SPT is that it's a genuine attempt to bridge that exact gap. It's trying to build a model that doesn't just describe reality, but is reality. A reality that emerges from one single fundamental process. So let's just quickly run through the key takeaways here. First, reality is a process, not a place. Second, everything we see, all particles and forces, emerge from the simple interference of a single cycling point. Third, mass isn't a thing, it's just a measure of how long a wave pattern can stick around. Fourth, this simple model seems to resolve some of the deepest, most confusing paradoxes in quantum physics. And maybe most important of all, it gives us a testable first principles origin for the masses of the particles that make up our world. And all of that, it leaves us with one last big question to chew on. If reality, at its most fundamental level, isn't a collection of separate little things, but is instead one single unified process, an endless cycle of becoming, then what exactly does that make us?